So you've been shooting for 3 years now.
I have. Yeah, it was 3 years in like April.
How do you like it so far?
I love it. Yeah, I never thought that I would do it for this long or like be able to make a living off of it and like still enjoy it after 3 years, but I love it and I always feel like there's like more to do and I'm always still excited about everything that I get booked for. So I'm very content right now. I feel like it's like every job where there's a massive pro con list. So for this, I feel like I I like that I'm my own boss, but I feel like it's a pro. I feel like everything I like about the job is also a con. Like I love that I'm my own boss, but I'm also completely responsible for myself, which is sometimes scary when you've never been that. But I what I don't like about it is probably the competitive nature that I think a lot of people think is just like inevitable. But you don't like, I feel like people think that you have to feed into that and it has to be a competition, and it just is not true at all.
Have you met some good friends in the industry
hmm
as well?
Yeah, my best friend is in the industry. We met at like a model house, like very randomly. So yeah, it's been really. I never thought I would have such a community in porn. I feel like that's like the most surprising thing for me. But there's so many people that I've met that are great friends that I can't imagine like not talking to, even if we weren't doing porn anymore. I was working at my family's flower shop. I started working there when I was like 15, like part time. And so I was just always working there. I was like customer service slash like planting plants and like just like processing flowers, which is kind of like mindless at a point. But it was really nice, and I love the job, and I still like I love going back home just so I can like visit the shop. But I knew that I didn't have like, unless I was going to own it someday, there was no like way for me to move up. Because it's like just my mom and my aunt. There's no like third position available. So I knew that I wanted to branch out into something else, and I just happened upon this, I guess.
Cool.
It depends. I feel like I do a lot more like acting roles now where I'm not necessarily having like the sex that I exactly would want to have, but I'm trying to like portray a character and kind of like put some truth into that and showing that I can like have more range. um, but I'd say for scenes that are like gonzo scenes, I feel like that's more accurate to like me at home because you're like focused less on all of the angles all the time. I feel like it's one of those things that really depends. Like sometimes if you have like you'll have a really busy week with work, but then you go home and you're like, I'm 10 times hornier now. Or sometimes you have a really busy week and then you're like, I don't want to touch anyone. So I feel like it just depends on like the work that I'm doing because there's tons of times where I'll do like a gangbang or a DP and then I'm like, yeah, I'm tired for like 2 days, like I'm like I don't want to do anything. But I feel like that's just like, I mean, being in porn, it's like that's I'm like back home, like I'm sure there's so many people who are doing all other hard jobs where you're like, I worked hard labor for 12 hours, like I'm tired when I get home.
Totally.
I don't think so. I feel like the sex that I wanted to have in my private life was extreme. And now, since I get to do a lot of that on camera in my real life, I don't always need to be so extreme. But there's also things that I like can't do a lot on camera that I really enjoy. So I feel like that is like there's things that are like almost like most companies don't shoot them because they're too extreme. So those things it makes me want to do in my private life because it was like I didn't realize when I was getting into porn. I was like, hey, there's things that they like can't bill for their credit card processor. So there's not a lot of fisting and there's not a lot of peeing. Like I didn't realize that. I think everybody definitely does, but it's not always like inherently negative. And I also don't tell everybody. Like, I'm not like talking about it with my neighbors and my banker. Like, I'm just like, I'm an independent contractor, I do modeling. So I feel like for the most part, like, if I'm telling somebody, it's because I don't think they're gonna have a negative reaction. But there's definitely a lot more like people on the internet who feel entitled to tell me that I'm going to hell. I feel like it's probably healthier now than it was when I was younger. Because when I was younger, like right before, probably the whole year before I was getting into porn, I feel like I like idolized so many people. Because I feel like you think that you know people from social media. You know, you're like, I know everything that's going on in their life. And then you realize that that's like 1% of it. You know, like it's catered to be showing you exactly what they want to show you. So I feel like I'm much more like at peace with it now. Like I'm not trying to impress anybody. I'm like, I use Twitter for work. You know, I need to be able to like contact directors and companies, and then Instagram is just like fun, you know? Like I like to be able to like see my friends back home, you know? Like that's what it's nice for now.
How do you deal with the negativity?
I feel like I've been lucky in that because my social media has never been like crazy popular, I've kind of like escaped part of that, and I haven't gotten like near as much negative feedback as a lot of people have. And then the rest of it is just like nobody's ever said anything that's like made me realize anything about myself, you know? Nobody's ever made me seem like, oh, you know, maybe I am going to hell, maybe I am hurting women. Like nobody's ever said anything that's ever resonated with me, so it doesn't affect me. A lot of the time I think it's funny, you know? I get joy out of people calling me a whore. Like it's just accurate. Yeah, I definitely when I was like 18, 19, so that was when Abella Danger was like new and insanely popular. But I was so obsessed with Keisha Grey when I first got in. I completely idolized her. I was like, she seems like she has a perfect life. Everything seems amazing. Like she's so hot. Like she seems nice and funny. And then I was in the industry for like 3 months and she retired, and I was like, well, I need a new role model. I need somebody that's currently shooting. And then it was kind of one of those things where I realized, like, I feel like almost everybody in porn, I'm like, if you're a nice person, you're a role model, you know? That's all it takes. Like, we're all doing a hard job. We should all be impressed with each other. I was one of those like lucky kids whose parents were not like watching over my shoulder when I was on the computer. So I had like a computer in my room when I was like 13 or something. So I imagine that I don't remember like sitting at my desk and like on my big Dell computer watching porn, but I imagine that I stumbled upon it like when my parents weren't home. But then watching I remember like watching kink porn, and I was probably like 16 or something, and I would watch like kink scenes that were like the tiny, because back then there was only like tiny little clips that were on tube sites of it, so I'd watch like 2 minutes of it, and I was always like, that's hot but it's scary, I'm not into it. I was like, it's hot but I don't want to do that.
But you were intrigued by it.
Yeah, I was just very intrigued. I was like, I think this is hot but I don't want to do that. And then I was like, oh, you know, years later you'll learn you do. I think I was probably masturbating before I watched porn. Cause I was like that person. I was like masturbating to like people kissing in movies. You know, I was like, oh, there's a romantic scene like this. I would watch like, I would look up like movie scenes where people were kissing on YouTube and like masturbate to that. So I think I was definitely like ahead of the curve where I discovered porn a little later, and then I was like, oh, I don't have to use YouTube anymore. They take their clothes off.
That is the difference, the clear difference between women and men, though.
Yeah. And I still remember it was like there was just like random little movie clips where I would watch and I'd be like, this is hot, and I would just watch it like 30 times in a row. And then I would just like fall asleep thinking about it. And that was porn for like 3 years. I would probably do like more research with agencies, because I felt like I did research, but when you're so far removed from the industry and you know nothing about it other than girls' Twitters, there's like only so much research you can really do, especially when everybody that you're talking to like wants to sign you because you're a young 19-year-old girl and they're all saying very nice things to you. So I feel like I just would have done a little bit more research with that, because I was just like, oh, Keisha Gray's with this agency, sign me up. Fly to LA next week. And I definitely just wish I would have been less harsh on myself the first year. I feel like it was one of the things where I thought like, you know, I would start porn and then everything would be like easy and my life would be great, and I was like, oh, I have to like put in hard work first until you get that reward.
Yeah.
I'm really into like rap. I have been for a minute. I was really into a group called Brockhampton for like 2 years. I was like a die-hard fan every time a new album came out. I feel like I like a lot of different stuff, and I'm like, I like Modest Mouse, and I like Death Cab, because when I grew up, like, Death Cab was from near there, so they were super big. But right now I'm listening to, like, Tyler, the Creator's new album, Igor, which is so good. I am a huge homebody, so I like reading and playing video games and like playing with our dog and just like hanging out with my friends and cooking. I'm starting to venture more into the hiking now, trying to be more athletic, but I like gardening a lot. You know, I like real homebody activities.
Oh, cool. Favorite author? Modern
Richard Seiken is his name. He has 2 books. They're like super short, super easy reads, but I feel like he has been like, he's held the title for a while. I found one of his books in like my library back home and read it. I think his first book is called Crush. And I was just like, I never realized that I liked poetry that much until I read it. And then I was like, oh, this made me feel things. Hopefully in 10 years I would love to still be a part of the industry. I have no plans to get out anytime soon. I would really like to move behind the camera, not completely. I mean, maybe completely, who knows? But I feel like I feel like Joanna Angel is like the model I'm trying to follow now, of like being behind the camera, having your own company, but like you don't have to stop shooting because of that, you know? So I feel like that's what I'm trying to emulate in some way, shape, or form any way I can.